Her body was found near the old logging road, curled around a creature that shouldn't exist. Tessa Hart lay bleeding out, surrounded by the corpses of 3 massive men. Why did a young waitress sacrifice everything for a dying wolf cub? And why did Damon Blackwood, the ruthless billionaire CEO, lock down the entire state to hunt the person who hurt her? This isn't just a romance. It's a bloody crime scene. The secrets buried in that snow were about to tear Crestwood apart. Stay with me, because the truth is far bloodier and darker than you could ever imagine. The police report, filed by Deputy Sheriff Mike Reynolds on November the 14th, stated that the emergency call came in at 11:42 p.m. The caller was hysterical, screaming about monsters near the abandoned sawmills off Old Miller Road. Most people in Crestwood, Oregon, knew not to go out that far past midnight. The locals whispered about wolves, big ones the size of black bears, but the official story was always wild dogs or escaped exotic pets. Tessa Hart didn't believe in monsters. She barely believed in paying rent on time. At 22, she was working double shifts at the Rusty Spoon, a diner frequented by truckers and tired locals. That night, her rusted 2014 Honda Civic had blown a tire 3 miles from home. She was walking. That was her first mistake. The snow was coming down hard, turning the pines into jagged white ghosts. Tessa pulled her thin coat tighter, her breath pluming in the freezing air. She cut through the woods to save time, a path she had taken a dozen times since childhood. But tonight, the woods felt different. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was heavy. Then she heard it. A whimper. It wasn't the sound of a dog. It sounded like a child crying, distorted by pain. Tessa stopped, her heart hammering against her ribs. She should keep walking. She knew she should keep walking. But Tessa was the kind of girl who moved spiders outside instead of killing them. She stepped off the trail, her boots crunching through the icy crust. "Hello," she whispered. She found him in a gully trapped under a fallen log. He wasn't a child. He was a wolf pup, silver-furred, and barely the size of a beagle, shivering violently. His leg was mangled, caught in a rusty serrated trap, a poacher's trap. Illegal in this county since 2018. Tessa didn't hesitate. She slid down the embankment, ignoring the mud soaking her jeans. "It's okay," she murmured, her hands trembling as she reached for the trap. "I've got at you." The pup snapped at her eyes, glowing a terrifying, unnatural amber. "Hey, I'm trying to help," she hissed, grabbing a thick stick to leverage the trap open. It took all her strength. She wasn't an athlete. She was a waitress who lived on caffeine and leftover pie. She pushed until her muscles screamed the rusty spring groaning. Snap! The jaws opened. The pup dragged its leg free, whining. But before Tessa could check the wound, the air around them changed. The smell hit her first musk rot and stale copper. She looked up. Standing at the top of the ridge were 3 men. They didn't look like hikers. They were ragged, their eyes devoid of humanity, their skin possessing a strange grayish pallor. Rogues. Feral wolves in human skin. They had been tracking the pup. "Well, well," the middle one sneered. His name, as Tessa would later learn from the court documents, was Silas. "Looks like the appetizers arrived before the main course." Tessa scrambled back, scooping the silver pup into her arms. The weight of him was surprising. He was dense, heavy with muscle, even for a baby. "Stay back," she warned, though her voice shook. Silas laughed. It was a barking, wet sound. "Hand over the runt, girl, and maybe we'll make it quick." Tessa looked at the pup. He was looking up at her, terrified. In that split second, something irrational took over. A fierce protective heat exploded in her chest. "No," she said. Silas lunged. It wasn't a fight. It was a massacre. Tessa turned her back to the attacker curling around the pup as Silas's claws, actually claws, raked down her spine. She screamed, the sound tearing through the silent woods. The force of the blow knocked her into the snow. Pain, white-hot and blinding, seared through her back. She felt the warmth of her own blood soaking her shirt. But she didn't let go. She kicked out her boot, connecting with Silas's knee with a sickening crunch. He howled not like a man, but like a beast. "Run!" she gasped to the pup, shoving him toward the thicket. "Go." The pup hesitated, licking the blood from her cheek, then bolted into the darkness. "You stupid bit," Silas snarled, transforming. His bones cracked and reshaped his face, elongating into a muzzle. Tessa closed her eyes, waiting for the end. She thought about her mom alone in that nursing home in Seattle. She thought about her unpaid electric bill. "This is it," she thought. "I'm dying in the snow." But the killing blow never came. Instead, the earth shook. A roar deep enough to rattle her teeth erupted from the trees behind her. It wasn't a scream. It was a command. Tessa forced her heavy eyelids open. A shadow had emerged from the storm. A man. No, a god. He was easily 6'5", wearing a tailored black wool coat that looked ridiculous in the muddy woods, yet he wore it like armor. His hair was dark as ink, his eyes a stormy, impossible grey. Damon Blackwood, the CEO of Blackwood Industries, the man who owned half the town. He didn't look at Tessa. His gaze was fixed on the three rogues. He didn't transform. He didn't need to. The sheer aura of power rolling off him flattened the grass around his boots. "You are on my land," Damon said. His voice was calm, terrifyingly so. "And you touched what is mine." Silas Fully Wolf now lunged at Damon. Damon moved faster than Tessa's eyes could follow. One hand shot out, catching the massive wolf by the throat mid-air. With a casual flick of his wrist, he slammed the beast into a pine tree. The trunk snapped. Silas fell motionless. The other two rogues scrambled back, whimpering, their dominance shattered instantly. "Leave," Damon commanded. "Tell your master the border is closed." They ran. Silence returned to the woods, broken only by Tessa's ragged breathing. She was cold. So cold. The snow beneath her was turning a dark, vibrant red. Damon turned to her. The rage in his eyes vanished, replaced by something unreadable. He knelt beside her, ignoring the mud ruining his suit pants. "You saved him," he said, his voice dropping an octave. He wasn't asking. He was stating a fact. The dog," Tessa slurred, her vision tunneling. "Is he okay?" Damon reached out his large hand, hovering over her face. He touched her cheek. His skin was burning hot against her freezing flesh. "He is safe, because of you." Tessa tried to smile, but her lips felt numb. "Good. Stay with me, Tessa," he ordered. He knew her name. Why did he know her name? "Tired," she whispered. "I know. But you cannot sleep." Damon ripped off his expensive coat and pressed it against her back, stemming the flow of blood. The pressure was agonizing. Tessa cried out a weak, broken sound. I've got you, Damon growled, scooping her up into his arms as if she weighed nothing. He held her tight against his chest, shielding her from the wind. Don't you dare die on me. As the darkness finally swallowed her, Tessa heard one last thing. It wasn't the wind. It was Damon Blackwood, the most powerful alpha on the West Coast, speaking into a phone. Get Dr. Harris to the manor. Now, prepare the surgery. If she dies, you all die. And then everything went black. The first thing Tessa noticed was the smell. It didn't smell like a hospital. Hospitals smelled like antiseptic and floor wax. This place smelled like mahogany old books and lavender. She opened her eyes. She was lying in a bed big enough to sleep 4 people. The sheets were silk cool against her skin. Above her, a crystal chandelier hung from a vaulted ceiling. Where the hell am I? Panic spiked. She tried to sit up, but a sharp pain in her back slammed her back down. She gasped. Careful, a voice said from the corner. Tessa turned her head. Sitting in a leather armchair, reading a file, was a man in a white coat. He looked to be in his 50s, with kind eyes and salt and pepper hair. This was Dr. Harris, a renowned trauma surgeon who had vanished from the public eye 3 years ago. You lost 3 pints of blood, Miss Hart, Dr. Harris said, closing the folder. 3 claw marks, deep. You're lucky the Alpha found you when he did. The Alpha. The memory crashed back into her. The wolf. The monsters. Damon Blackwood, tearing a beast apart with one hand. Where is he? Tessa croaked. Her throat felt like sandpaper. He is handling matters, Harris said, diplomatically. He poured a glass of water and brought it to her lips. You are at the Blackwood estate. You are safe here. I need to go home, Tessa said, pushing the water away. My shift, my mom. Your manager at the Rusty Spoon has been informed you were in a car accident and are recovering, Harris said. Your mother's care facility has been paid for the next 6 months. Tessa froze. What? Consider it a thank you, a deep voice rumbled from the doorway. Damon Blackwood stood there. He had changed out of the bloody suit. Now he wore dark jeans and a black t-shirt that clung to a physique that belonged on a Greek statue. He looked exhausted shadows under his eyes, but the intensity of his gaze made Tessa want to pull the sheets up over her head. Doctor, Harris bowed his head slightly, a gesture of submission, and slipped out of the room, closing the heavy oak door behind him. Silence stretched between them. Damon walked to the foot of the bed. He didn't look like a savior. He looked like a predator, deciding if he should eat. Why? Tessa asked. Why pay for my mom? You saved my nephew, Damon said. Tessa blinked. The puppy. The wolf, Damon corrected. His name is Toby. He is 7 years old. He wandered off the territory. The rogues you met, they were hunting him to get to me. Tessa's brain was misfiring. Wolf? You mean like a werewolf? She laughed nervously. Okay, look. Mr. Blackwood, I appreciate the help, but I think the blood loss is making me hallucinate. Damon didn't smile. He walked around the side of the bed, moving with that same unnatural grace she had seen in the woods. He stopped inches from her. Tessa, he said softly, you saw Silas transform. You saw what I did to him. She swallowed hard. She had seen it. She couldn't deny it. So you're all wolves. We are lichen, he said. And you, Tessa Hart, are a problem. A problem? Humans aren't supposed to know about us. Usually when a human sees a shift, we have protocols. Tessa felt cold again. Protocols, you mean you kill them? Damon's eyes flashed with something dark. We erase the memory, or we exile them. He leaned in closer, his hand resting on the mattress beside her hip. But I can't do either to you. Why not? Because, Damon said, his voice rough, when I found you in the snow bleeding out, my wolf recognized you. Tessa frowned. Recognized me? We've never met. Not visually. Spiritually. Damon looked frustrated, as if he was fighting a war inside his own head. He turned away, pacing to the window that overlooked a vast, snow-covered forest. You have no scent, he said, staring out at the trees. To us humans have a distinct smell. Fear. Sweat. Fragility. But you smell like nothing. Like clean rain. It's why the rogues didn't smell you coming until you were right on top of them. Is that bad? It's rare. Impossible, actually. He turned back to her. And when I touched you, the bond snapped into place. Tessa's heart skipped a beat. What bond? Damon looked at her, his grey eyes burning. You are my mate, Tessa. Tessa stared at him. The billionaire king of Crestwood just told her she was his soulmate. It was the stuff of teenage fantasy novels. But in reality, looking at the lethal power coiled in his frame, it was terrifying. I don't understand, she whispered. You don't have to understand yet. Damon said, his tone turning cold professional. He was putting up a wall. But it means you cannot leave. You are vulnerable. Silas wasn't working alone. Those rogues were hired guns. Someone wants my family dead, and now that you've saved Toby, they will think you are part of the pack. You are a target. So I'm a prisoner, Tessa asked, her voice rising. You are a guest under my protection, Damon corrected. Until I find out who sent Silas, you stay here. For your own safety. And if I refuse, Damon walked to the door. He paused, his hand on the brass handle. You faced 3 wolves to save a child, not your own. You are brave, Tessa. Don't be stupid. He left. Tessa sank back into the pillows, her mind reeling. Werewolves, mates, assassins. She looked at her arm. There was an IV drip. She looked at the side table. There was a glass of water and a small silver bell. She was alive. But as the winter sun began to set over the Blackwood estate, casting long, claw-like shadows across the room, Tessa realized one thing. She had walked out of the woods, but she was still deep in the wolf's den. Tessa healed faster than she should have. By the 3rd day, the deep lacerations on her back had knitted into angry red scars, and the dizziness had faded to a dull throb. Doctor, Aris called it resilient physiology. But the way he glanced at Damon suggested something else entirely. On the morning of the 4th day, the door to her gilded cage was unlocked. You are free to roam the East Wing and the gardens. Damon had told her over a breakfast of eggs Benedict and grapefruit brought by a silent maid who refused to make eye contact. Do not go near the North Tower. Do not go into the basement. And do not leave the estate walls. The gate sensors are set to trigger an alarm if you cross them. So house arrest with a view, Tessa mumbled, stabbing a piece of ham. Damon didn't laugh. He adjusted the cuffs of his charcoal Armani suit, checked his Rolex Submariner, and left without another word. He had been like that for days, cold, distant, treating her like a volatile nuclear weapon he had to store in his living room. Tessa spent the morning exploring. The Blackwood Manor was less of a house and more of a fortress disguised as a museum. The hallways were lined with portraits of men who all looked like Damon Stern, grey-eyed and dangerous. Around noon, she found her way to the solarium. It was a glass-walled room filled with exotic orchids and ferns heated to a tropical temperature that felt amazing against her still aching bones. "You're the human." Tessa spun around. Sitting on a velvet chaise lounge, hidden behind a massive fern, was a woman. She was stunning crimson hair, sharp cheekbones, and eyes the color of emeralds. She wore a white silk dress that cost more than Tessa's entire life earnings. "I'm Tessa," she said, trying to be polite. The woman stood up. She moved with a prowling grace that made Tessa's stomach tighten. "I'm Lydia, daughter of the Alpha of the River Pack, and Damon's intended." Tessa blinked. "Intended, you mean fiancé?" Lydia laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Fiancé is a human term. We have arrangements, alliances. My father and Damon have been negotiating a union for 3 years to merge our territories." She circled Tessa, sniffing the air delicately. "And then you show up, smelling like nothing, weak, fragile." "I didn't ask to be here," Tessa said, her voice firming up. "I saved a puppy. That's it." "A puppy?" Lydia sneered. "You saved Toby, Damon's nephew, the only heir to the Blackwood line currently breathing. You think that makes you a hero? It makes you a liability." Lydia stopped, inches from Tessa's face. "Let me be clear, little waitress. Damon's wolf might be confused by your scent, or lack thereof. But Damon is a king. He needs a queen, not a charity case. Once the rogues are dealt with, he will pay you off, erase your memory, and send you back to your trailer park. Don't get comfortable." "Lydia." The name was spoken with the force of a whip crack. Damon stood at the entrance of the solarium. He wasn't wearing his suit jacket. His white dress shirt was rolled up to the elbows, revealing forearms corded with muscle and faint white scars. Lydia's demeanor changed instantly. She softened her posture, submissive yet seductive. "Damon, I was just welcoming our guest." "You were threatening her," Damon said calmly, walking into the room. The air temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. "I heard your heart rate spike from the hallway, Lydia. You smell of jealousy." Lydia flushed. Jealousy of her Damon? Be serious. She's human. She's a pet. Damon stopped in front of Lydia. He didn't touch her, but she flinched as if he had. "She is under my protection. If you speak to her with disrespect again, I will forget your father's alliance, and remember only that you insulted the Blackwood house. Get out." Lydia's jaw tightened. She shot a look of pure venom at Tessa, then dipped her head and hurried out of the room. Tessa let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. "Charming friends you have." Damon turned to her. The anger in his eyes didn't fade when he looked at her. It just shifted into something else. Something hotter. "Lydia is a necessary annoyance," he muttered. "Politics." "She said she's your intended," Tessa challenged him. "Is she?" Damon stepped closer. The space between them crackled with static electricity. Tessa wanted to step back, but her feet wouldn't move. "Do you care?" he asked softly. No. I just don't want to get murdered by your girlfriend in my sleep." Damon let out a short, rough laugh. "She isn't my girlfriend. And she won't touch you. No one will touch you." He reached out his fingers, grazing her chin, tilting her head up. The contact sent a shockwave through Tessa's nervous system. Damon's pupils dilated, the grey swirling into black. My wolf wants to claim you, he whispered, as if talking to himself. Every time you are near, he claws at my ribs. He screams that you are ours. Tessa's breath hitched. And what do you want? Damon pulled his hand away as if burned. He stepped back, his face hardening into a mask of stone. I want to keep my people safe. And right now you are the biggest threat to that safety because you distract me. He turned on his heel. Dinner is at 8. Dress formally. We have guests, and Tessa, stay close to me. The guests were the inner council, the 5 most powerful wolves in the region, gathered to discuss the rogue threat. The dining room was dimly lit, a long mahogany table set with silver and crystal. Tessa felt ridiculous in the dress Damon had sent to her room. It was a midnight blue velvet gown that hugged every curve, with a back that dipped dangerously low. She felt exposed, especially with 5 pairs of predatory eyes tracking her every move. She sat to Damon's right. To his left was Gavin the beta. Gavin was younger than Damon, with blonde hair and a charismatic grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. So this is the girl, said an older man with a scar running through his eyebrow. This was Victor, the eldest council member, the one who fought a rogue with a stick. And one, Gavin added, raising his wine glass, to Tessa, for saving young Toby. To Tessa, the table murmured. Tessa took a sip of water, her hand trembling slightly. It was just adrenaline. It was bravery, Damon rumbled. His hand rested on the table inches from hers. The heat radiating from him was the only thing grounding her. Brave or foolish? Victor asked, cutting into his steak with savage precision. We have a security breach, Damon. Silas knew the patrol routes. He knew exactly when the pup would be near the border. That implies a leak. The room went deadly silent. I am handling it, Damon said, his voice low. Are you? Victor challenged. Or are you distracted by your new house pet? The rogues are getting bolder. They attacked a supply truck on the I-5 yesterday. They aren't just scavengers anymore. They're organized. Someone is funding them. I said I am handling it, Damon snarled. A low growl vibrated in his chest, audible to everyone. The silverware on the table rattled. Victor lowered his eyes, submitting, but the tension remained. Halfway through the meal, Tessa felt suffocated. The talk of borders, kills, and territory was overwhelming. Excuse me, she whispered. I need to use the restroom. Damon nodded once. Don't go far. Tessa slipped out of the dining room and into the grand hallway. She didn't go to the restroom. She needed air. She walked toward the terrace doors at the end of the hall. As she passed the library, she heard voices. The door was cracked open a fraction. Tonight, the distraction is set. Tessa froze. The voice was hushed, urgent. Are you sure Damon is on high alert? Damon is obsessed with the human. He's weak. Once the perimeter is breached, we take the boy, and we kill the girl to break him. Tessa's heart stopped. She recognized the second voice. It wasn't a stranger. It was Gavin, the beta, the smiling man who had just toasted her. She clamped a hand over her mouth, backing away. She needed to tell Damon. Creak. A floorboard under her heel groaned. The voices inside the library stopped instantly. Tessa didn't wait. She turned and ran. She wasn't wearing sneakers. She was in heels. She kicked them off and sprinted down the marble hallway, her breath tearing at her throat. Tessa! She rounded the corner and slammed straight into a solid wall of muscle. Damon caught her by the arms to steady her. What is it? What's wrong?" "Gavin," she gasped, gripping his lapels. "It's Gavin. He's in the library. He's talking to someone. They're going to let them in. Tonight." Damon's face went blank. "Gavin is my brother in arms. We grew up together." "I heard him, Damon. He said you were weak. He said they're going to kill me to break you." For a second, Damon looked at her, searching for a lie. He saw only terror. Before he could speak, the lights went out. The entire estate plunged into darkness. The emergency alarms didn't sound. The silence was absolute. "Get down," Damon commanded. Crash! The glass windows of the main hall shattered inward as 3 dark shapes leaped from the snowy garden into the house. They weren't in human form. They were massive, snarling wolves, their fur matted with mud and snow. "Run to the panic room," Damon roared, shoving Tessa toward the stairs. "Go! I'm not leaving you! Go!" Damon turned to face the intruders. He didn't shift. He didn't have time. He grabbed a heavy iron poker from the fireplace and met the first wolf mid-air, swinging with enough force to shatter a skull. Tessa scrambled up the stairs, stumbling in the dark. Below her, the sounds of chaos erupted, snarls, screams, and the sickening crunch of bone. She reached the landing and looked down. Damon was fighting 3 of them, a whirlwind of violence. But then from the shadows of the dining room, a figure emerged. It was Gavin. He was holding a silver handgun, specifically a Desert Eagle, a weapon designed to stop things that don't want to stop. He aimed it at Damon's back. "No," Tessa screamed. She didn't think. She grabbed a heavy Ming vase from the hallway table and hurled it over the banister. It wasn't a perfect shot, but it didn't need to be. The vase smashed onto the floor inches from Gavin, exploding into ceramic shrapnel. Gavin flinched, firing the gun wildly. The bullet missed Damon's heart and tore through his shoulder. Damon roared in pain, spinning around. He saw Gavin. The betrayal registered on his face for a split second before the alpha took over. Damon shifted. It was terrifying to watch. His clothes shredded as his body expanded, bones snapping and reforming. In seconds, a massive midnight black wolf stood where the man had been. He was twice the size of the rogues, a creature of nightmare and shadow. He lunged at Gavin, but more rogues were pouring in through the windows. Tessa saw them swarming up the stairs toward her. She turned to run to the panic room, but a hand grabbed her ankle. She fell hard, her chin striking the floor. She was dragged backward, her fingernails scraping uselessly against the wood. "Got you, little snack," a rough voice hissed. Tessa kicked, screaming, but the rogue was too strong. He hauled her up, pressing a knife to her throat. "Stop!" the rogue shouted to the room below. "Or she bleeds." The fighting below ceased instantly. Damon, in his massive wolf form, froze. He looked up, his muzzle dripping with blood not his own. His grey eyes locked onto Tessa. "Shift back, Blackwood," the rogue holding Tessa commanded, "or I open her up." Damon's wolf whined a sound of pure frustration. Slowly, painfully, he began to shift back into human form, leaving him naked, bleeding from the shoulder, and vulnerable. Gavin stepped forward, wiping blood from a cut on his cheek. He looked up at Tessa with a sad smile. "Sorry, Tessa," Gavin said. "Nothing personal, just business." He turned the gun on Damon. "Goodbye, old friend." "Wait," Tessa screamed. "Don't kill him, I know where the money is." The room froze. Gavin looked up. "What? The money?" Tessa lied, her mind racing at 1,000,000 miles an hour. Damon showed me. The offshore accounts, the codes. He wrote them down. I know where they are. It was a desperate, stupid lie. But greed is a powerful thing. Gavin hesitated. You're lying. Am I? Tessa stared down at him, channeling every ounce of defiance she had left. Kill him and the money disappears forever. You know how paranoid he is. You'll never find it. Gavin lowered the gun an inch. He looked at Damon, then back at Tessa. Bring her down, Gavin ordered, the rogue holding her. If she's lying, we kill them both slowly. As Tessa was shoved down the stairs, she locked eyes with Damon. He was bleeding, outnumbered, and betrayed. But in his eyes there was no defeat. There was a promise. Buy me time, his eyes seemed to say, and I will burn this world for you. They were thrown into the cellar of the old hunting lodge on the edge of the Blackwood territory, a place Damon hadn't used in years. It was cold, damp, and smelled of rust. Gavin hadn't killed them yet. He was too greedy. He believed Tessa's lie about the bank codes, but his patience was wearing thin. Damon was in bad shape. The silver bullet in his shoulder was poisoning him, preventing his wolf from healing the wound. He sat propped against the stone wall, his skin pale beads of sweat on his forehead. They had shackled his wrists with silver cuffs, burning his skin with every movement. Tessa wasn't shackled. To them, she was just a fragile human. That was their mistake. Damon, Tessa whispered, crawling over to him. She tore a strip from her ruined velvet dress and pressed it against his bleeding shoulder. Stay with me. Damon's eyes fluttered open. They were hazy, the grey iris dull. You lied. He rasped, a faint smirk touching his lips. I don't write down codes. I know, Tessa said, her hands trembling as she tightened the makeshift bandage. I just needed him to stop aiming that gun at your head. Clever girl, he murmured. He leaned his head back against the stone, his breathing ragged. But Gavin isn't stupid. He'll figure it out soon. You need to escape. There's a drainage vent behind the wine racks. You might fit. I'm not leaving you, Tessa said firmly. Tessa, look at me. Damon groaned, grimacing as the silver burned his wrists. I am dying. The silver is spreading. If you stay, you die too. Then we die together, she snapped. Or we live together, but I am not running away again. Damon stared at her. For the first time, he looked at her not as a fragile thing to protect, but as an equal. He reached out with his shackled hand and brushed a stray hair from her face. His touch was scorching hot. Why? He whispered. I kidnapped you. I threatened you. You saved me, she said, and I saved your nephew. We're even. Plus, she hesitated, her heart pounding. You said I was your mate. Does that mean I get superpowers too? Damon let out a weak chuckle that turned into a cough. No, it just means you're stuck with a stubborn wolf. Suddenly, the heavy iron door at the top of the stairs creaked open. Gavin descended, followed by 2 armed rogues. He looked impatient. Time's up, Tessa, Gavin said, twirling the Desert Eagle. I checked the study. No codes, no notebook. He walked up to the bars of their cell. So either you have a photographic memory, or you played me. Tessa stood up, placing herself between Gavin and Damon. I hid them. In my head. I memorized them. Gavin laughed. Is that so? Recite the first sequence, then. Tessa's mind went blank. It starts with B-L-A-C-K. Gavin sighed. Boring. He raised the gun through the bars, aiming at Tessa's chest. I think I'll just shoot you in the leg first. See if that jogs your memory. Gavin! Damon roared, trying to stand, but the silver cuffs flared, sending him crashing back to his knees. Don't touch her. Or what, Damon, or you're a king without a crown, a wolf without teeth. Gavin cocked the hammer. Say goodbye to your pet. Tessa squeezed her eyes shut. Click. The lights in the cellar flickered. A low, vibrating hum filled the room. It wasn't electricity. It was sound. A growl so deep it felt like an earthquake. But it didn't come from Damon. It came from Tessa. Her eyes snapped open. For a split second they weren't brown. They were gold. A shock wave of pure energy exploded from her body, knocking Gavin backward into the wall. The gun flew from his hand. The two rogues were thrown off their feet as if hit by a truck. Damon stared at her, stunned. Tessa. She didn't know what she had done. She just felt angry. A primal, ancient rage that wasn't hers yet belonged to her completely. Get the keys, Damon commanded, seizing the moment. Tessa scrambled for the keys on Gavin's belt while he was dazed. Her hands were shaking, but she managed to unhook them. She tossed them to Damon. He unlocked the cuffs. The moment the silver left his skin, his healing factor kicked in. The wound on his shoulder stopped bleeding. His eyes flared a brilliant, glowing grey. Now, Damon growled, standing up to his full height. Run! Tessa didn't argue. She bolted for the stairs. Gavin shook off the concussion and lunged for his gun. Kill them! He screamed. Damon didn't shift. He didn't need to. He grabbed the cell door and ripped it off its hinges, using it as a shield as bullets sparked against the metal. He threw the heavy iron door at the two rogues, crushing them against the wine racks. He grabbed Gavin by the throat. You wanted the throne, Gavin, Damon snarled, lifting the beta off his feet. You can have the basement. He slammed Gavin's head into the stone wall. Gavin slumped unconscious. Tessa, Damon shouted. Upstairs now! They ran up the stairs, bursting into the lodge's main hall. But it wasn't over. Through the windows they saw headlights. Dozens of them. More rogues, Tessa asked, panting. Damon sniffed the air. He paused. Then a so terrifying smile spread across his face. No, he said, not rogues. The front doors burst open. It wasn't enemies. It was an army. Hundreds of wolves in human and beast form poured onto the property. At the front was Victor, the old council member, holding a massive assault rifle. Beside him was Lydia, looking surprisingly fierce with a pair of daggers. We got your distress signal, Victor barked. Took us a while to triangulate the tracker in your watch. Damon looked at Tessa. I told you, I handle things. Tessa slumped against the wall, the adrenaline crashing. You had a tracker. Standard issue for billionaires, Damon said, walking over to her. He checked her over his hands running down her arms, searching for injuries. Did he hurt you? I'm fine, she said. But back there, what did I do? I pushed him. With my mind. Damon looked at her, his expression serious. We need to talk to the elders. You aren't just a mate, Tessa. You're something else. The aftermath was chaotic. Gavin was taken into custody to face a tribunal that would likely end in execution. The rogues were hunted down by the pack enforcers. The Blackwood estate was secured. 2 days later, Tessa stood on the balcony of Damon's bedroom, wearing one of his oversized shirts. The snow had stopped. The moon was full, hanging huge and yellow over the forest. Thinking about running. Damon stepped onto the balcony. He wrapped his arms around her waist from behind, pulling her back against his chest. It felt natural now. Necessary. I have nowhere to go, Tessa said, leaning into him. My apartment probably has an eviction notice by now. I bought the building, Damon said casually. And the diner. You're technically your own boss now. Tessa laughed. You can't just buy everything, Damon. I can buy safety. I can buy comfort. He kissed the sensitive spot behind her ear, sending shivers down her spine. But I couldn't buy you. He turned her around so she was facing him. His face was solemn. We spoke to the elders, he said, about what happened in the cellar. Am I a freak? No, Damon said. You're a catalyst. It's a legend we thought was a myth. A human with a dormant spark of the moon goddess's power. It only activates when a true mate is in mortal danger. So, I'm a magic battery. You are the balance, Damon corrected. Wolves are chaos and violence. You are the anchor. That's why you have no scent. You are pure energy. It's why my wolf chose you. Without you, I would eventually lose myself to the beast. With you, I am whole. Tessa looked up at him. The monster she had feared in the woods was gone. In his place was a man who looked at her like she was the only star in the sky. So, Tessa whispered, what happens now? Damon reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. He didn't kneel. Kings don't kneel. But he held it out with a vulnerability that spoke volumes. Inside was a ring, not a diamond. It was a band of black titanium inlaid with a glowing piece of meteorite. The pack needs an alpha, Damon said, but an alpha is nothing without his Luna. Be my queen, Tessa. Rule this city with me. Protect the innocent. And let me spend the rest of my life making sure you never have to be brave alone again. Tessa looked at the ring, then at the man who had torn the world apart to find her. She thought about her old life, the lonely shifts, the cold apartment, the fear. Then she looked at the forest, the pack, the future. She smiled. Put it on me, wolf boy. Damon grinned a real boyish grin that lit up his dark eyes. He slid the ring onto her finger. Forever, he promised. He leaned down and kissed her. It wasn't a tentative first kiss. It was a claiming, a promise of passion, danger, and a love that would terrify the stars. From the forest below, a howl rose up, then another, and another, until the whole valley was singing. They were welcoming their queen. 6 months. It felt like a lifetime ago that Tessa Hart had been shivering in the snow on Route 9, clutching a dying wolf cub to her chest. It felt like a different universe, where she worried about Tip's rent and the heater in her Honda Civic rattling itself to death. Now standing before the floor-to-ceiling mirror in the master suite of Blackwood Manor, Tessa hardly recognized the woman staring back. The scars on her back, 3 jagged lines left by Silas's claws, were faded now pale, silvery ridges against her skin. She traced them lightly with her fingertips, before the silk covered them. The dress was a masterpiece commissioned by Damon, specifically for tonight. It was a liquid silver that pooled around her feet, like moonlight on water, backless and daring, designed to show the scars, not hide them. Wear them like medals, Damon had told her. They are proof that you survived. She took a deep breath, smoothing the fabric over her hips. Tonight was the winter solstice gala, the most important social event in the supernatural calendar. But this year was different. For the first time in a century, the doors of Blackwood Manor were open to select humans: the mayor, the chief of police, the city council. It was the first step in Damon's radical new policy of integration, and it was the launch of her project, the Heart Sanctuary. The heavy oak door clicked open. Tessa didn't need to turn around to know who it was. The air in the room shifted, becoming charged and heavy, smelling of pine rain and him. "You look—" Damon's voice trailed off. She turned. The Alpha King of the West Coast stood in the doorway, and he was breathtaking. He wore a tuxedo cut from midnight blue velvet, the color so dark it looked black, with a crisp white shirt that accentuated the tan of his skin. His hair was styled back, revealing the sharp, predatory angles of his face. But it was his eyes, stormy gray, and burning with intensity, that pinned her to the spot. He crossed the room in 2 strides, stopping inches from her. He didn't touch her immediately. He just looked, his gaze devouring her. "I look okay?" she asked, her voice slightly breathless. "Okay." Damon let out a low, rough laugh. He reached out his large, warm hands, settling on her waist, his thumbs tracing the curve of her hip bone through the silk. "Tessa, you look lethal. My wolf is currently pacing circles in my head, demanding I lock the door and keep you here for the next week." Tessa smiled, resting her hands on his chest. She could feel the steady, powerful thrum of his heart beneath the layers of expensive fabric. "We have guests, Damon. 300 of them, including the mayor." "The mayor can wait," he murmured, leaning down to brush his lips against the sensitive spot just below her ear. "Or he can leave. I own his office building anyway." "Damon," she scolded gently, though she leaned into his touch. "We have to go down. This is for the sanctuary, for the pups." At the mention of the pups, Damon pulled back slightly, his expression softening into that rare look of adoration he reserved only for her. "You have done the impossible, you know. 6 months ago, the council wanted to execute strays. Now they are writing checks to fund your rehabilitation center." "They aren't doing it for me," Tessa said. "They're doing it because they're terrified of you." "A healthy mix of fear and respect," Damon agreed with a smirk. "But mostly they are doing it because they see what you are. The catalyst, the balance." He took her hand, raising it to his lips to kiss the black titanium ring on her finger. "You ready to face the music, my queen?" "As long as you're holding my hand," she whispered. "Always." They left the sanctuary of the bedroom and walked to the top of the grand staircase. The noise from the ballroom below was a dull roar, clinking crystal. The murmur of hundreds of conversations, the soft swell of a string quartet playing Debussy. As soon as they appeared at the top of the stairs, the room went silent. It wasn't a gradual hush. It was instantaneous. Every head turned. Every conversation died. To the human guests, they were simply a power couple, the reclusive billionaire industrialist and his stunning philanthropic fiancée. But to the wolves in the room, and there were many, sensing the pheromones and power radiating off the balcony, this was something else entirely. This was the Alpha Supreme and his mate. Damon didn't flinch under the scrutiny. He radiated authority. His posture relaxed, but ready, his hand firm in hers. He was signaling to every predator in the room. "She is mine. Look, but do not touch." They descended the stairs together. Tessa focused on her breathing. Left foot, right foot, smile. At the bottom of the stairs, the crowd parted like the Red Sea. Victor, the old council member who had once questioned her, was the first to approach. He bowed his head, a deep, respectful gesture. "Alpha," Victor grunted. Then he turned to Tessa and bowed lower. "Luna, the layout for the new dormitory is on your desk. We broke ground this morning." "Thank you, Victor," Tessa said, her voice steady and clear. "I want to make sure the heating units are installed before the next snow. No one sleeps in the cold, not on our land." "It will be done," Victor promised. As they moved through the crowd, Tessa realized the truth of her new reality. She wasn't just a figurehead. She was leading them. She stopped to speak with the mayor's wife about zoning laws, then seamlessly switched to discussing territory patrols with the alpha of the neighboring mountain pack. Halfway through the evening, a commotion near the buffet table drew their attention. A waiter had dropped a tray of champagne flutes, the crash echoing through the hall. Out of the chaos, a blur of silver fur shot across the polished marble floor. "Toby," Tessa gasped. The wolf, now almost fully grown, but still possessing the lanky energy of an adolescent, skidded to a halt in front of them. He wasn't the broken, dying thing she had found in the trap. His coat was thick and lustrous, his eyes bright amber, his muscles coiled with power. The human guests gasped, some stepping back in fear. To them, he was a massive, intimidating dog. Damon stiffened, ready to command the room, but Tessa moved first. She knelt down in her priceless gown, not caring about the silk touching the floor. "Hey, buddy," she cooed. Toby let out a happy yip and nudged her hand with his wet nose. He licked her cheek, making the crowd ripple with nervous laughter. Tessa stood up, resting a hand on Toby's massive head. She looked out at the room, at the humans, trembling in their tuxedos, and the wolves watching her with reverence. "Ladies and gentlemen," Tessa said, her voice projecting without a microphone, "I'd like you to meet the first resident of the Heart Sanctuary. This is Toby." She scratched Toby behind the ears, and the formidable predator leaned into her touch like a kitten. 6 months ago, Toby was left to die because he was different, because he was hurt. Tessa continued, her eyes scanning the crowd, locking eyes with the influential men and women of Crestwood. "Tonight, we celebrate a new rule in this city. Strength isn't about who can kill the fastest. Strength is about who you lift up when they fall." She felt Damon's hand slide onto the small of her back, a pillar of support. "The sanctuary is open," Tessa declared. "To the lost, the broken, and the hunted. If you need a home, you have one here." The silence held for a heartbeat, and then applause broke out. It started with Victor, then the other wolves, and finally the humans joined in, swept up in the magnetism of the moment. Damon leaned close to her ear, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through her chest. "You realized you just invited every stray in Oregon to my backyard." "Our backyard," she corrected, smiling at him. "Our backyard," he conceded, looking at her with an intensity that made her knees weak. "Let's get out of here." They slipped away while the guests were distracted by Toby, who was now shamelessly begging for hors d'oeuvres from the mayor. They walked out onto the snowy terrace, the cold air biting at Tessa's skin, but she didn't feel it. Damon took off his tuxedo jacket and draped it over her shoulders, pulling her against him. The forest stretched out before them, vast and dark, the pines dusted with white. It was the same forest where she had almost died, the same forest where she had found her destiny. "You did good, Tessa," Damon said softly, looking out at his domain. "The pack is stronger than it has ever been. You healed us." Tessa leaned her head on his shoulder, watching the steam of their breath mingle in the air. "I just didn't like the idea of anyone dying alone in the snow." Damon turned her to face him, his hands cupping her face. The moonlight caught the silver in his eyes, making them glow. "I love you," he said. It was a simple sentence, but coming from him, It carried the weight of an oath. I will love you until the moon falls from the sky and the mountains crumble to dust. And I love you, Tessa whispered, reaching up to run her fingers through his dark hair. Even when you're growling. He smiled, leaning down to capture her lips. The kiss was slow, deep, and full of promises kept. Beneath the winter moon, surrounded by the silent woods, the waitress and the king stood together. They had walked through fire and blood to find this peace. And as the wind howled through the canyon carrying the scent of pine and snow, it seemed to whisper a new legend to the sleeping world. A legend not of monsters, but of the girl who tamed one. Beware the wolf, the wind seemed to say, but fear the girl who holds his leash. And that is the story of how a single act of kindness changed the fate of an entire pack. Tessa didn't just save a cub, she saved a king from his own darkness. It shows us that true power isn't about claws or fangs. It's about the courage to stand your ground when everyone else runs. I hope you enjoyed this roller coaster of romance, betrayal, and redemption. If you want more stories like this, where the underdog becomes the queen smash, that like button, share this with your squad, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell. Until next time, stay wild. I can help you generate a catchy title and thumbnail concept for this YouTube video to maximize clicks. Would you like that?